Hey, Timothy Darrell Young here. BS MPA. 15 years a targeted individual. Every 15 to 20 seconds, more or less, for 15 years, I've had 1,600 sender expert, neuro-linguistic programming perp torturers in my remote neural monitoring as an unaware TI for 15 years. And then with street theater, EMF perp fake people, and then real flesh and blood for a once and the number for all.com TI, and then target audience hit on Oregon and the West Coast. I felt like designed around me. Where was I going? That once and for all. The 15 years, so about 5,000 of the Department of Homeland Security, Electric Corps groups have tried to, among other things, suicide me. I'm more aware of TI now and learning more from research. I'm still in an outpatient facility, and I've been here about a year, and it's looking like I may move to another facility. They may watch my meds more. Perps were bragging about me getting a sheet of meds like the other week, and none of them were actually medication. Somebody was saying, like, for to destroy a TI's life around the clock, it's like $2 million a year to just make my life difficult. Understatement. Anyways, I'm out at Juniper House. I made graphical representation at great risk to my health. I mean, the perps follow me everywhere, but talking about the black Swiss cheese hole portals, it's been years now, and then sources get messed up, but I have even on Facebook a nonprofit that I left a mark for on the map in Redmond, Oregon. Hi, Redmond. I'm sorry those EMF perps came into your town. I hope we all learn to be better educated, to be defending against electromagnetic terrorism, fake people, mind and body rape, and the advantages the EMF perp take over 3D reality. Some of them were bragging about the rural communities in the world really being victimized by this technology. People that grow up with not a lot of exposure outside a small home, and electromagnetic form perpetrators come in and they can read your mind, they can take any form, they can knock you out from the EMF and do anything they want to you, and you wake up and not knowing. So I'm pretty smart in some areas, not all, and I was severely taken advantage. We're so easily misled by monitors and people sitting on the openbci.com headgear and other locations, torturing often very good men and women around the clock in systematic denial of constitutional rights, Bill of Rights, home protection, and I'm one of those estimated 1.5 million Americans. The synthetic telepathy unfolds or is revealed a little bit around the world. It's I've seen so much hell. 1,600 NLP experts having a little every 15 to 20 seconds, making sure I couldn't think big again. 5,000 estimated with flesh and blood and EMF perps over 15 years, like 3 years of really intense live street and community live psychological operations. Once and for all.com basically happened to me. Along the way, I was talking to some of my mental health staff, some like victories while I've been here. I've been here about a year. I've deprogrammed myself from a trauma-based mind control torture package meant to humiliate me. The world would have gone on, I would have died. And I don't want to die for like a good 20, 30, maybe 40 years, but being so trauma-based mind control with street theater and attacks on my personhood and NLP every 15 to 20 seconds, I was tricked into like wanting the fifth interpretation of Christians are like, we've had it, let's destroy the world of sin. So I call it the false witness terror torture package because it involves EMF perpetrator gangs that systematically lie to you and then lie to everybody else. And then none of it is Christian. This is all synthetic telepathy and handling and perping and torture and reasons for torture and fusion centers and InfraGard and Electric Core and community-based agents and Command Central and shelved plans I don't want to be the problem for, that they already have the reaction and the solution was already there. I get played at speed of thought, like on this broadcast, somebody will make my nose itch. So instinctively, I itch my nose, and then that's somehow some kind of signaling to people that have my R&M in this perp. So many layers of deception and patsy systems and verb use. So the people that threaten you as monitors that say, oh, you're going to go to hell. It's TI or in hell, designed from the EMF because we lose our constitutional Bill of Rights and other safety, sanities, and dignities and, not being attacked by the intel communities and whatnot. So it's actually an empty threat. And then this is coming from people that are led or misled to believe there's no life after death. And I leaned to John Lear as the senior elder expert on the moon and black swishy cheese holes that have depth in the darkness of space around the compound, and avoiding systems of like rearranging the planets or efforts to make that hologram white tunnel something else, limited only by imagination, and complications of what could be overthought. But books like the Tibetan Book of the Dead that have studied the Bardo state of mind, mine's been mangled by EMF and neurolinguistic perps like routinely for many mornings. The Buddhist saying about what looks like the easy road at first turns out to be worse, and what looks like the harder road, maybe longer but is better overall and in the long run, is more or less explains the white tunnel of light and getting blasted with artificial senses of love and speculations based on interacting with monitors. They would say there's no life after death. Some of them misled to believe that or led to believe that, but I tend to think Lear's probably right, and a lot of other people. And read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I would recommend for folks. Pemra Chodron, Bob Thurman, and Thich Nhat Hanh are some in my family. Some people get that from the reading the Bible, but that's a savior model. I studied Buddhism that teaches you nobody save you. You have to save yourself. You can study how while alive, but in the end you do it yourself. And that's also the same thread and logic and perspective. Like, these are psychological operations. This is synthetic telepathy. It can be confused with Buddhism even to mislead, but it's all Mara to me. Brass tacks, psychological operations professionals, security industries professionals, those that know the perp end of all of this stuff, those that have met a monitor or two, are more important than that washing over and confusing people based on conflating with religion when it's really something else. So John Lear's the expert on the moon. I think there's life after death. I think because they can put their consciousnesses here as a monitor and separate it with a laptop and that headgear from openbci.com and torture me and 1.5 million Americans around the clock. That if you can separate your consciousness with the monitor while alive, then the likelihood of consciousness transfer after body death is that much greater than I had observed, and primarily as a non-believer before observing this headgear in my life and the interactive capability with the EMF sub-reality and broadcasts and whatnot. So I get lied to a lot, totally. Last 15 years it's been like deep state attacks, not it's fakery and war crime and torture. And in the same thread of logic, those enemy combatants in the Middle East that had voice of God tech put in their head from our military telling them to put their arms down really wasn't the voice of Allah. And so, same thing with every monitor on this broadcast. They can appear human. They can get a photo of somebody they thought I knew in the past that had a Valencia filter on them. So when they show up making an EMF perpetrator in the image of somebody they see off Instagram, and then their skin's too dark because it was off of a Valencia filter, like that actually happened here. So down the street from D1X and Intel, Instagram's got some image problems, and that's the emphasis that I mean, is that with this technology, you could look at a photo on Instagram and then walk around as that person, and your body's passed out in another location. So it's very powerful tech. People can be very easily misled. None of it is God, but they have the ability to fake it very convincingly. And if you're not educated, you really can get it taken advantage of. Like walking into a village, instantly knowing the local deities, siphoning up all that information, and then spitting out a hologram of the deity, giving you, telling you that, oh, I'm giving you the whole village and all, and that's more or less what's been done with this tech on Earth since probably as early as the 20s. I think they've made TIs, is some of my guess, and then in recorded history, it's probably pretty old tech faking people. I worry about what they call the digital divide, and the second entendre is that people who have this headgear can sit around and suicide people like me from the comfort of their home. And like the digital divide has to do with being an EMF being or an EMF perpetrator or 3D, not only these other considerations. And the Internet of Things is like people as things. I've been an Internet of Thing for 15 years. So yeah, it's really deceptive, and I can't emphasize enough how misleading we all can be by these monitor consciousnesses who can walk around as Jesus. They can walk around as a Valencia photo of somebody who was a little wider than that. They, heavy T on Stay Strong targeted individuals. His wife got replaced by an EMF perpetrator. He was like checking out her eyes wondering if she was a reptilian. It was an EMF being faking his wife. That's more or less happening around me here at the Nut House. I've been here about a year, and they've really closed in. I think I have 1, 2, maybe 3 perps moved in, some EMF, some engaged in the neurolinguistic programming language, where you can sort of like, and then still say something. And neurolinguistic programming has been highly weaponized. I've endured like 1,600 experts in this motherfucking having a piece of my grill from the intel agencies and all kinds of extracurricular activities. So I picked up a little bit of it too, and have explored it in self-defense and realized that a southern affected voice that I used, I call it Sweet Tea, sort of in the spirit of Phil Hendry. I mean, I did a Bobby Dooley for a while too. She was hilarious in some really rough spots. Commenting on the torture that they're doing, giving verbiage to like how they really, like monitors look down and abuse the human condition, and making fun of my perpetrators. And it turned out when I looked at it, and I haven't read all the manuals on Bluebird. He's a bluebird or an artichoke, so I'm going to try and tone that down. And then even on this perp, like at speed of thought, like a woman came visually to me in my head and was like, they won't let it, I can't hear you say the other voice. I get censored for slicing and dicing all this for maximum utility off a TI on systematically repeated patterns of behavior. Like if it wasn't a multiple personality, for me it was just only a voice. Like at speed of thought, they were like, this is a bluebird, we can't let them even hear him. Like, so I'll try to do better on my counter surveillance, but for me it was a faked southerner's voice. Over 1,600 EMF perps up and out, illegal sender relationships to my brain. Every 15 to 20 seconds, neurolinguistic programming can be anybody, can take the form of anything. an unfair amount of them were from the South. So there's been kids, there's women, hell for a straight guy, maybe a little bit. It's kind of, I'm drawing a blank. They may be drawing that memory out in descriptors of the 1,600 real people in other locations that have been involved in my torture, and then 5,000 altogether, including street theater, EMF, perp, and flesh and blood over 15 years. Life psychological operations out of 2016 that almost killed me. I tested out the strength of my spine against an airbag, and turns out I have a spine. And so it's August 2019. I'm still alive at 40. I'm excited about it. It's been difficult to hold on to corroborated information about the Black Swiss cheese hole portals that have depth in the fabric of the darkness of space, as opposed to holograms and white tunnels and things like that. Structural, not weaponized JPEG of the EMF. And that's my gift as an Arhut. Yeah, for me, it's a result of a 2,400-year prayer of Buddha and the Buddhists. I'm not going to learn how to reincarnate, getting reincarnated, or not learn how to not reincarnate, getting reincarnated at the moon. So this is synthetic telepathy. It's not spiritual. This is like CIA projects and trying to conceal genocide and slow kills and eugenics and Project Phoenix and ill from the EMF taking advantage of the 3D reality, not religion. And Buddha was more of a leak. He would be harder to fake as a misleading figure into the white tunnel of light, but they probably tried it in all the dials in of human conditions and trying to keep all the human capital misled and reincarnating here. So I'm betting there's life after death, and if you don't know what you're doing, you get reincarnated through the moon, and that everybody from Perpetopolis that was lied to say that, oh yeah, you can transfer your consciousness from a laptop and headgear to a different part of the globe, but after you die, consciousness doesn't transfer. There's just no life after death. So they're lying themselves, I think. I bet that there is life after death. I want to get the fuck out of it. Get out those Black Swiss cheese holes. So, yeah, hanging in there. I may post this video up in there. I got a new little flippy floppy to put my ugly mug up on the interwebs. It's an extremely difficult life being a TI, and I get so made a fool of, like, triggered into saying stuff or behavior that I wouldn't have even been a part of if my consciousness wasn't destroyed every 15 to 20 seconds for 15 years. Like, don't even have time to think and knew better, like shit like that. So it's evening in the west side. I may walk this out here so you can sort of see some of the northwest weather as the sun is getting to set. I made it to 40. I want to make it to like 60 or 70 if I can handle it. And usually I'm in a sunny disposition even though I've been tortured. And I like to maintain that. It's more pleasant. So here we go. But I get tortured. Oh yeah, and conservative Christians are aware that Christians are getting set up to be handled, and they hate it too. I heard that and can corroborate. I've been tactically and strategically sort of censored for maybe more left-leaning folks, but it's a country for all of us, and I'm not really that partisan. It's kind of a waste of time. And wonks like to get things done, so that involves being bipartisan. Yeah, like Republicans, like conservative Democrats or conservative Republicans, know better about things like false flags and MK Ultra stuff and disciplining psychopaths and war, and I respect that, and would rely on a spirit of, there's the sun, maybe some bipartisanship at this time of strife and contrived white nationalism. People are being tortured into white nationalism. Mind control, slavery, international synthetic telepathy agenda that I lose just even incarnating, which is much more important than who they shuffle through the White House. And me for avoiding getting triggered in Buddhist mantras, sometimes I just can't get down to counting to 5, and that's about all I have. And it can get you through some real tough 15 to 20 second increments NLP torture sessions. So Buddhist, it's synthetic telepathy, not spiritual. Aspiring arhat, and they won't even be able to collect the data right. It's like asking a survey question: how many days a week do you beat your wife? You're never gonna get an honest answer. And I'm not the only one that's talked about the black Swiss cheese hole portals. I don't want to aim to continue to humiliate monitors, but that is trauma-based mind control that I've fallen into the pattern of. Plus, I think I'm fucking hilarious, and actually sometimes I really am. So anyways, it's about 20 minutes into this video. Phone's been taken maybe once or twice for these ops. I'm trying to avoid fake news and getting triggered, and avoiding trauma-based mind control behavior outcomes. Like, I knew enough in school to have studied the trappings of white nationalism, and knew, maybe methodically and more of a wise way how to avoid it. But for this situation, because I'm a TI, I don't have a constitution or a Bill of Rights, and I'm a torture puppet, every 15 and 20 seconds, just like the last 15 years more or less, I'm interrupted from even being wise. I got onto an important board for Nerd Kingdoms and the intelligence, and I wanted to be a political dissident because that's what I wanted to do, and I didn't know the intelligence community was lurking behind that. And I got made a TI, tortured every day, so I couldn't think big picture as well as I could have with my own wetware. Tortured every 15 to 20 seconds with NLP from real psychos, enabled by this tech, sociopathic by this tech, because they can't fucking die in front of you. Everybody's got to be Mr. Smith, right? I mean, the entire electric cord, and that's a movie. And TIs aren't Neo. I had a well birth and a fortunate benefit from a wonderful education in the state of Oregon, and parents who cared about smarts. This is MK Ultra and a bunch of other projects, like this guy James Lyko that I read recently, who's out on the Oregon coast, playing TI or not. He's talking about Project Phoenix, and it has some documentation about the misdirection, playing fairy dust in my house. Meanwhile, Seattle's under siege. Those people are poisoned by broadcasts. It's happening or unfolding or sort of singularitying this brain-computer interface, electromagnetic terror, weaponizing the EMF around 3D. And I'm, tactically, strategically disabled, paralyzed in some regards, and can slow down to think enough to be like America first, and then everything else international second. And had a fortunate education, even not being able to slow down to think as well as I could have, because I'm interrupted every 15 to 20 seconds. I know enough that from education and not just impulse to be like, that's the correct course, particularly even in this international context of the EMF being global. So I said it before, you don't miss it until it's gone. The no such agency, NSA. I didn't really ever feel very unsafe in any home prior to being a TI at 25. And then it's been a torture chamber everywhere I went, remote torture. People, budgets $2 million a year to make sure I have a bad day every day. Understatement. So for those 330 million Americans that aren't TI or EMF perp or EMF beings are involved in this war crime against creation, crime against humanity. It's pretty great. And not that I needed to be tortured to be the only person to say this, but And for some, like Christians, it's appropriate to say a prayer. I'm Buddhist. I don't rely on a savior figure. You have to really rely on yourself in Buddhism, and I think that's really the ultimate way out of non-reincarnation, particularly even scientific studies of what's been understood in traditions like the Tibetan Book of the Dead. What was I going to say? Buddhism, synthetic telepathy, not spiritual. Aware TI, trying to be professional, not be made a useful idiot. But I get made a useful idiot at speed of thought because they're backed by the full force of the federal government in art of war, only faking vulnerability or weakness when they're really strong. My EMF perps. So yeah, and I'm happy for good moments and okay days, doing a mantra every once in a while, medical use of marijuana so I can sort of help myself not think sometimes, an aware TI, no monitor is actually a god. However, if you're uneducated in the psyops, they very much can convincingly fake it and take advantage in horrible ways of individuals, families, and communities. And so maybe I'll get this up on my YouTube before too long. And he's been beat up already for 5 years. Kevin Christian of Georgia, outside of Atlanta, at TI, made a lot of sense to me over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And I was knee deep in psychological operations and being misled and other TI like that. So I'll try and keep my presence up. I get cell phones and stuff like that so I can be a helpful peer to other TI. Oh yeah, some of the things that I've done at this address in the last year: made the recipe for Oregon coffee food. TIs that don't like to get poisoned, Insure Plus and coffee. Perfected and was tested the N52 level magnet rape code destroyer to stop electromagnetic form perp rape coding like they did to Dr. Horton. The intelligence community had her remote tortured, and part of it was she was remote raped. May get more stable housing sooner. And then some other things I talked with, like my therapist, of like, yeah, I did a lot of good stuff this year. And here's a pumpkin patch that I started growing that's gotten nice and big. There you go. And that's not a euphemism for anything. That's a pumpkin in the yard. And sometimes a cigar is only a cigar. And for the statements of President Bush that he took to his Twitter account, his presidential library, somebody may have tweeted it beforehand, but I could tell he was getting he was getting NLP'd. Somebody had his R&M and was making a fool of the human condition, and President Bush, it sounded like, from what he said, and it's a Christian statement too, he's like, people really need to say what they mean, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and whatnot. And I, as somebody who's endured neurolinguistic programming covertly and overtly, 5,000, some EMF perp, some flesh and blood, I agree. And at the same time, I still can't even slow down long enough to be wise and think about stuff, because every 15 to 20 seconds I'm still getting neurolinguistic programming in my head. But I read that in Twitter some months ago and then reflected, I thought, oh, there's somebody's neurolinguistic programming, the NLPing the former president. And some of the stuff, and it's few words to deceive, and I'm not trying to deceive, but the world really is very unchristian. The 7 heavenly virtues, I'm getting exterminated for those. Pro-sin, like expert in it and never getting caught, particularly from the EMF, and disregard of like the entire 10 Commandments, has been rubbed in my face like a dog's nose and shit. no presumed Secret Service home protection, no protection from hostile soldiers in your house and whatnot. So humiliated, not humbled. And the risk in Nazi Germany and the former USSR with these secret spy groups was to turn people into the secret police, even the EMF back then, over lie. Good people. My life's basically a fucking snuff film to some views from like Central Command and that real psychos. I sort of lost that thought. Buddhism, Tibetan Book of the Dead, portals have depth in the fabric of the darkness of space. You couldn't really hologram over that, and apparently like maybe beams of light pass through them every once in a while from other places in the solar system. If you see me looking away on video, my videos get edited so bad, like secret word twists put in there and contrarian with other TI and shit that I noticed. But where was I going? Moments of death, portals, counterintuitive studies, learn from other TI who've experienced some of the tricks while in a 3D body from monitors. Oh, okay. So top 1% in the world for reading comprehension and cognitive thinking. What did he do? Got on the State Board of Higher Education. So never let him think big again, because you're going to NLP him every 15 and 20 seconds and then destroy the State Board of Higher Education and then do psyops to blow up the military budget and divert from higher ed anyways. I get played for the fool. And similarly, I am no Stephen Hawking. Nope. That guy was a amazing scholar and global contributor to the field of astrophysics. But a monitor consciousness, like Kevin Christian describes, was talking here on this perp that Stephen Hawking was disabled purposefully, like by the intel communities, because a future threat for all of the good he could do for the totality of Earth and humanity and understanding space. And he kept talking and found a way to keep teaching. And so, again, I'm no Stephen Hawking, but it was a duck that did invent the newspaper comment section at speed of thought in 2004 as a mind control slave. Unfortunately, still, I was poisoned in grad school. They wanted to make sure I didn't even finish my master's. The intel communities, gang stalkers, EMF perps, Secret Service guys, that I was one of those that got mixed up. I'm not a career criminal. I should never have been made a TI. It was too much temptation. It was corruption. I was a future threat for what the good I could have done for higher ed and the academy in this country. Not evil or crime. So they may not tell you that. So he was disabled, and similarly at top 1%, literally in the globe, for reading comprehension and cognitive thinking at my youth. So I was never able to fully realize that, because narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths with this tech got a hard-on for a double duck and never fucking let go. So 15 years later, and I'm tortured every day. I'm usually just very nice about it. Try not to get triggered. Oh yeah, there's this picture of this guy I saw on Twitter. He looked like military, like, and he's got this look on his face, like I can't recreate it, but he's in a shopping mall, and he's like, the caption says triggered. Oh man. So the monitor consciousness and interacting with the body, as Kevin Christian, the targeted individual of Atlanta, Georgia, describes, no monitor is God. However, they can fake it convincingly if you're uneducated about psyops and the technology. Like 5,000 have had a piece of me over 15 years. And so, like, there's this, Kevin does all these great interviews, and I'm fortunate to be one of them. This woman's talking about a monitor consciousness living in her nose, and she's like, and for, a monitor was really living my nose, and I'm like explaining to people, and for that monitor, she was really, or he, or whoever that was, their consciousness really was in that woman's nose. I had a eugenics agenda, monitor consciousness, rape code, rectal torture for many, many years, and discovered the cure for me and passed it on open source to as many people as I could think would be able to get the info. So where I'm being censored, the N52 level magnets, medical rubber, and tape external, leave it on for 6 months, a year, day and night, and your rape codes will be destroyed too. So that's been my success, among other happy things that happened here at the Black Swiss Cheese Holes in Space to Freedom After Death, or an outpatient nut house in Hillsboro, Oregon on 6th Street, where I endure, among other things, satanic disrespect of a mental patient on 6th Street. I mean, it's like it's meant to be. I'm a little tougher than I look. So this is a long video. I usually don't do super long ones. Lear's the expert on the moon. And have a good evening.